what's at stake here is two things: the rule of law and what's in the wider public interest. And under the rule of law, there has been an illegal armed rebellion in the Yemen,
which we all agree on.
I think it's very important for people to understand the context.
And the Saudi intervention is backed by the United Nations, so therefore it's legal under international law. But they're also obliged to abide by international humanitarian law.
And of course, they're obliged to international humanitarian law.
That's what's at issue here.
And then
your colleagues say there's been very credible evidence of violations, and you say it's just allegations.
The issue is about whether there's been an actual breach of international humanitarian law that would then bring a responsibility on the British government to act in a particular way. I don't believe this law has been tested in this way before. It is obviously a proper place for that to happen is the courts, and that's what the Foreign Affairs Committee are saying.
Your colleagues in the other committee say that while we wait for the courts to decide that, we should suspend arms sales to Saudi Arabia in case arms that we sell them are being used in violation of international law. That's completely disappeared from your report.
It has, because the view of my committee is that it would be an act close to insanity on every grounds to do a blanket suspension of British arms exports to Saudi Arabia.
What about a selective suspension? What about the selective suspension of the kinds of bombs that we know, kinds of bombs sold by Britain to Saudi Arabia, which we know have been dropped on civilian targets in Yemen?
And the implications of that, some of those are laser-guided bombs, giving the Saudis the capability through a proper targeting process to actually hit what they're intending to hit. And if we stop supplying them those weapons, they then may have to turn to less guided weapons, the kinds that the Russians have been using in Syria, for example, where the accusation is...
But that's a false argument. If we are contravening our own laws by selling weapons to Saudi Arabia that are being used in contravention of international humanitarian law, and the test is very low. It's if there's a clear risk that these weapons might be used in contravention of international humanitarian law, then we must stop doing it.
And then we're going to have to see how the judges interpret that. The practical consequences of that are actually disastrous for everybody. It would mean our relationship with the Saudis and the influence we have over them about the joint interest we have is that they are rigorous in making sure there are no breaches of international humanitarian law,
but that
they put their armed forces under the same kind of standards that we do.
But we clearly don't have that influence because look at all these pages of evidence
in that direction. Well, the context this has got to be in, and this is exactly why the Foreign Affairs Committee has probably come to a different conclusion to the others, is this is actually about our wider relationship with Saudi Arabia, as well as the more narrow relationship about Saudis moving to our standards in terms of conducting a military campaign.
But our relationship with Saudi Arabia is irrelevant if we're breaking our own laws. Then surely we have to change the law.
Well,
do you think we should change the law?
That is in the Foreign Affairs Committee report that we would, if it turned out that the courts decided we were in breach of our law, we should then look at the whole legal framework.
So we should soften our stance on
the
criteria under which we license our arms exports.
We might have to.
I think some people may look at all of this evidence that has accumulated over 18 months of what's been going on in Yemen and conclude that either you're naive, gullible, or something worse.
Well, they might think that you were naive and gullible, and
Why?
the people who come to the other conclusion.
Why would they think
because
that?
There is a war going on in the Yemen. This is about international legal authority trying to suppress an illegal armed rebellion, and we believe in the rule of law, and the illegal armed rebellion has to be addressed. Otherwise, it's the law of the jungle, and the people in the Yemen are then victims of whichever militia armed group can impose their will on those people.
Crispin Blunt, thank you very much.